On today's show, how the Breadley Beal trade and the Donovan Mitchell trade compare or don't compare, plus the draft track record of Koby Altman. Let's dive in.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
Today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with our promo code LOCKEDON. That's PrizePicks, and the promo code is Locked On. I'm Chris Manning. I cover the Cavs and the NBA for places like SB Nation, Cleveland Magazine, and I co-host the Just Basketball Show. That man over there is Evan Dammarell, the founder, the proprietor of Down Euclid. He is currently angling his face with a hand motion that implies that he is looking at something that is confusing him on the internet.
Curious. We're going to talk about the draft in the final segment. There's a name that popped up, and I was like, what's he up to these days? And I clicked on it, and I was just kind of reading his bio.
I'm very
Jerome Robinson. It's just like the Clippers took him 14th overall, and I'm like, I forgot about him. And then I clicked on his name. Just like, oh, he's in the G League.
Yeah, not good. All right, Jake Stevens, as always, is producing. Evan, Breadley Beal is now a Phoenix Sun. And this is an excuse for us to kind of talk about these different trades. The Beal trade is them going all in, but they paid a very different price than what Cleveland paid, obviously. Beal had a no-trade clause. He could kind of direct himself there. That is obviously another difference between this and the Donovan Mitchell trade Cleveland made a year ago. I guess do you think of seeing what Beal went for, seeing where Beal is at, and I think Mitchell also is just frankly a much better player than this version of Beal at 30. Do you have any thoughts about how these two trades compare or don't compare?
Well, it certainly screams the fact that Matt Ashiba does take this rivalry with Dan Gilbert personally, because he too had to go get a superstar shooting guard.
Yeah,
but
what's Dan gonna do? Like what's the next move in the Rocket Mortgage Michigan State Mortgage Bros war? Like what's going on now? Do we get a Cavs nutty move? I don't know.
Maybe they get into the automotive loan industry and they pop that bubble next. But either way, looking at them from the basketball standpoint, obviously, if you just look at the return package, like the Cavs gave up Larry Markkinen, who became an all-star, Colin Sexton, who, despite the knee injury, may be missing some not considerable but decent amounts of time this season for Utah, is a pretty solid player. Has the potential to be a starter, like that's six man for the Jazz, and then you have Ochai Agbaji, who didn't play much to begin the season, and then the Jazz started kind of, pulling things back and getting ready for the draft lottery, and Agbaji looked pretty strong there, and the Cavs also gave up just a mammoth amount of picks. And I think the key difference here is Brad Beal had a no trade clause, Donovan Mitchell didn't, and Breadley Beal will probably be the last player ever to get a no trade clause. Sounds like the totally unforeseen happening, just because Breadley Beal had full control of the situation when it became publicly known that the Wizards are ready to rebuild and they intended to trade Breadley Beal. They have to approach him and say, like, hey, all right, Brad, we're going to move on. We need to hit reset on this entirely. You kind of control your own destiny here. Not kind of, you do control your own destiny here. So what would you like to do? Would you like to go to, where would you like to go? And based on the reporting, Milwaukee was listed, and I don't know if that was just there was much fire behind that smoke, but the real front runners in this race were either the Miami Heat or the Phoenix Suns, and I think Brad made it clear that he would prefer to go to either of those teams. According to, I think, Shams Charania, Kevin Durant recruited him quite a bit to Phoenix, whereas Jimmy Butler and the Heat just kind of made a push as well. And I think there's always just been an interest for Breadley Beal, who played college in Gainesville, which is not close to Miami, but it's still in Florida nevertheless. Maybe there's just an affinity to spend your 30s in Miami, Florida, which, I get it. But it then came down to, okay, they have the two destinations. It just became somewhat of a bidding war, but the two teams that Breadley Beal had a preference on were somewhat limited asset-wise. It's just the fact that I think Chris Paul's contract doesn't have the extra years on it like Duncan Robinson's did. And then you look at Kyle Lowry versus Landry Shamet. Landry Shamet is a lot more, I would say, movable as a piece, at least compared to Robinson or just any of those other players in this package. And could be of use to Washington until they kind of just keep kind of churning out some of this rotational talent they have. And now the Wizards are having a fire sale. I think a lot of their players have become available. I think Kyle Kuzma is a lot more realistic. I touched on that when people were talking about that. But either way, and just the grand scope of things on the Beal trade, it's not really an apples to apples thing because it was an open bidding war for Donovan Mitchell. Like the Jazz could keep upping the ante and the asking price, whereas Beal said, all right, I have my 2 spots. Both of these spots are pretty limited asset wise. And so the Suns had to kind of make, I can't think of an analogy without swearing. So they try to make the best of a not so great ideal situation when it came to this trade. Whereas the Jazz could just be like, all right, New York, let's see how much we can get from you. And then also negotiate offers on the side like Cleveland until they find something that they actually want as an organization.
I think what is different here is that Cleveland has made its all. The Mitchell move was an all-in move, but it's a move you like kind of willingly give up the capital they did for. The Suns were at this point where I think they already obviously gave up all their capital and all their good young players and budding superstar players or budding all-star players in Mikal Bridges to get KD. That was like the all-in-ness of that. Mm-hmm. The Beal thing is like the sprinkle on it, and like obviously his contract, his age, his not making like an all-star team since 2019, like the no trade clause, all of that really complicated it. The Mitchell thing just kind of played out, kind of just like, okay, they lose the way they do. Mm-hmm. It's kind of expected he's going to get moved, and like the Cavs just kind of seemingly snuck in the back door a little bit to pull that off. Whereas like the Suns thing, it just, if you go to the Bartlesine connections between the CEO of the Suns and his dad, who's Beal's agent, to the fact, again, the no trade clause, he got to direct where he wanted to go. Mm-hmm. That is just, these things just obviously play very differently. I also just, frankly, like even with the pick differences, even with the amount Cleveland gave up to get Mitchell versus what it cost to get Beal, mm-hmm. I would rather make the Mitchell trade than the Beal trade 10 times out of 10.
I do too. I'm not. So I like Breadley Beal a lot as a player. I think he makes sense as he is a star level talent, but I don't know how high his stardom goes. Whereas Donovan Mitchell clearly is like the best player on the Cavs, and the Cavs went and got the best player on the trade market, not the free agency market last year. And I like you said, there's a lot of stuff against Brad Beal, whether it's health concerns, availability, just the mammoth size of that contract. I always forget how big that contract is until I would like glance at like NBA team payrolls. I'm just like, well, Brad Beal's making a lot of money. Go get that bag, my man. But it's fascinating, I guess, just because I think the luxury for Cleveland is like they have Darius Garland, who's going to begin his rookie max extension. You have Donovan Mitchell, who is making quite a bit of money. Jared Allen is locked in. Evan Mobley will be signed down the line as well. Whereas Phoenix, Devin Booker's locked in. Kevin Durant is clearly locked in. Brad Beal as well, and so is DeAndre Ayton. Like the Suns are a team.
Well, Ayton might be getting moved.
Ayton. Well, no, that's the thing. Like the Suns, after acquiring Bradley Beal, at least right now, are so far into the luxury tax threshold that they realistically can't make any moves, and they have like next to no depth on their roster right now in order to kind of like fix things or just kind of round things out, because like Torrey Craig is like their most vital free agent right now because they don't have a ton of depth at the 4 spot or just the wing spot in general after just the flurry of moves they made to get KD and Brad Beal. But like you said, they have to probably move, not probably, they will move Ayton just because like Book, KD, and Beal obviously aren't going to get moved. So like you have to use Ayton to kind of finesse that to get breathing space financially and things like that. And I think that's a win for Cleveland if you look at the off-court aspect, but the on-court impact of it as well is like you said, the move for Phoenix was to go get Kevin Durant. It was kind of in the ether since last summer that it could be a possibility just to team up with then Chris Paul and Devin Booker and maybe DeAndre Ayton, but the Nets had no interest in Ayton at the time, but neither here nor there. I personally like this move for the Suns. I just think they are so limited going forward asset wise too, that if this doesn't work, they're screwed because a lot of people aren't going to want to help them, or two are going to be willing to take on, like, let's say Breadley Beal, just like this trade ends up being a bust for the Suns just because of the concerns.
Also, he keeps his no trade clause.
Yeah,
he still has his no trade clause.
He keeps his no trade clause, so like he can flat out just, again, we could see this again if it doesn't work and the Suns like, we need to move him to get something. No team's going to feel inclined to give up a lot for a dude who has a no trade clause because, again, it's such a pariah in this league that they exist still. And it's the health concerns, it's the contract, it's so many things. And like Phoenix is just so limited going forward. Whereas you look at Cleveland, yeah, they don't have a lot of draft picks because of the Donovan Mitchell trade. They don't have their draft pick this year because of the Karis LeVert trade last year. But they do have second rounders still. They still have like Jared Allen is a tradable asset for sure. I would say Mobley, Mitchell, and Garland are your three untouchables. But you have some players that are a little bit more cost effective and maybe a little bit more liquid in terms of being an asset. Whereas the Suns are kind of locked into what they have. And you're really, 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 really tempting fate now because, like, yeah, Frank Vogel's a great coach, great defensive mind. It's just like, how far can this team go with how limited like their roster can be or is currently?
Mitchell's also like a top 10 offensive player, and Beal is like a top like 30 offensive player. Like, I think there is a chasm between those two guys.
Agree.
So there's that.
And yeah, I like Brad Beal, but like there's levels and nuance to this, and Brad Beal it just feels like he hasn't done a ton since John Wall left the Wizards, and the Wizards kind of entered this weird cycle of trying to build around him, and nothing's really happened. He's not a needle mover, if you will.
Today's episode is brought to you by Ibotta. Grocery, school shopping, and getting a little something for yourself or any of us. You know you're already doing it, so why not get cash back for it? You can do that with Ibotta. You can earn cash back on every shopping trip. Ibotta gives you cash back on hundreds of grocery items, from produce to personal care to pantry goods. Either link your loyalty account or upload your receipt after you shop and you get cash back. It is that easy. The average Ibotta user earns $120 a year in real cash back. That could cover the cost of an entire shopping trip. Or you could use that cash back to pay for some of that flight you've been eyeing, that game you're dying to go to, or that fancy dinner you've been craving. Ibotta gives you real cash back, not points. Other apps give you points that don't amount to much. With Ibotta, you get real cash back. You can cash out your bank account, PayPal, gift cards. You can earn cash back on hundreds of online brands and retailers too when you start with Ibotta. That includes Lowe's, Macy's, Sephora, Best Buy, and more. Right now, Ibotta is offering our listeners $5 just for trying Ibotta by using the code LOCKED when you register. Just go to the App Store or Google Play Store and download the free Ibotta app and use the code LOCKED. That's IBOTTA in the Google Play or App Store, and use the code LOCKED to get $5. Want to remind you that we have a big Locked On NBA draft out now. Locked On's NBA mock draft special is here, and it's bigger than ever. Follow along with the entire first round in a 6-episode ultimate mock draft experience that only Locked On can deliver. No calf stuff because they don't have picks, but all episodes are available now on Locked On NBA Big Board on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Evan, let's move on to draft week. Some storylines we're looking out for. I think, here's what I'll say. I think with this Beal trade, I think a lot of the attention now goes to Dame, what Portland does at 3. I also think from a Cleveland perspective, it still feels like to me they would need to be in a position to wait for something else to happen that they can maybe get involved in to do something. There is very little out there as far as what the Cavs might do. There's the reporting that they're looking to get a pick in the 20s and 30s, as is Phoenix. If they could do that, that would be something for us to talk about come draft time if they can pull that off. But that's really the most salacious rumor, if we can even call it salacious, that we have with the Cleveland Cavaliers right now.
Yeah, it's a compelling argument. I think people point at like the Christian Braun situation in Denver, who we touched on that last week. Like, wasn't obviously the most impactful player for the Nuggets, but he gave them a respectful 13 to 15 minutes in the playoffs, or at least in the NBA Finals, rather, like per game, and wasn't like a total liability out there for Denver, which did play at least a small part in them winning a championship. And I'm not saying, like, let's say it's been reported that Houston's looking to ship their or trade their additional second round pick that's in their first round pick, rather, that's in the 20s. Maybe Cleveland's able to find a way to kind of grease the wheels on that transaction to acquire that draft pick. But for now, as you said, they are looking at a second round selection, and this is going to be a guy who likely won't make like an immediate contribution for Cleveland in the second round, and it'll be a guy that they sign a two-way, develop with a charge, and hope that he becomes a meaningful player possibly next year at the earliest. So we'll see. Like you said, there's going to be a lot of attention on Damian Lillard going forward, Zion Williamson as well, maybe Brandon Ingram too, depending on what the Pelicans do, if they are serious about trading up for Scoot Henderson. But the Dame stuff just feels like a kid learning how to drive for the first time. There's a ton of mixed signals, and it could turn into a lot of nothing. It'll be interesting to see, because there's like one camp saying like, oh, Dame Lillard's going to decide his future going forward, or there's a lot of other people saying like, oh no, he's staying, and Portland wants to trade the 3rd and 23rd pick to build around Dame. Like, there's so much noise in the atmosphere, and we won't really know until the draft happens on Thursday, but it's only going to get louder and louder between now and then. And we'll see. I don't, or at least I can't think of like a realistic trade. Maybe Cleveland finds a way to send Cedi Osman to Houston, and Houston then just doesn't guarantee his contract because he has 1 year left on his deal, right?
Who? Cedi? Yeah. So Cedi just has the 1 year non-guaranteed, like $6.7 million.
So yeah, if like let's say the Cavs just did that, like they used Cedi Osman's non-guaranteed contract to acquire that second first round pick from the Rockets, because the Rockets are possibly going big name hunting this summer to get James Harden and build around just that nucleus with Harden and maybe the young players they jettison to acquire other players as well. So maybe that's something to think of. But other than that, like realistically, I just don't know what the Cavs can like give up to or at least use as like a trade asset to acquire a first round pick. So I'm thinking, yeah, maybe a trade happens. I feel like it doesn't. And the Cavs are very content with their situation, and now have to look at like, okay, what does free agency have to offer us? Because the market could be a little bit more different now because of this Breadley Beal trade, or maybe the Blazers do trade Dame somewhere else, and like the Blazers start tearing things down elsewhere. Like some teams could kind of have some available dudes who want to move on to a winning situation, and the Cavs could be somewhat attractive because they do have some star power on their team.
I'm going to be on the side of fun, Evan, and I'm going to say the Cavs do get a pick in the 20s. Late 20s, early 30s come Thursday. I think it's in their interest to do so.
I think too, but
even if there's someone now with the ceiling of it, like, so if we want to, we'll talk about Koby Altman's draft record in segment 3. The reason they go get the Kevin Porter Jr. pick the year they did is because KPJ has had this really high ceiling with some off-court stuff, and obviously that is why he leaves Cleveland. Ultimately, some things that happened here, you can go read about that. We're not going to relitigate any of that. It's not fair to KPJ. It's not fair to the Cavs. They did that because KPJ had the ceiling, and it was like, we love this guy. He's high on our board. We're gonna roll the dice, and we're gonna spend the money to do it. I think even if you're not chasing the upside of someone at 30, I think the money you could spend on a pick to functionally buy a pick in how that looks, I think you should do it. I think it is in your interest as a franchise to get someone in like that right now, and there's some options. It seems like there are a lot of NBA, quote-unquote NBA-ready wings, late 20s, early 30s. Are those ever locks? No, because that's not how the draft works. But I think they should do it. And I think if they can keep their second-round pick this year, too, that would also not be a bad thing. Look at what Denver has done and what they're going to do in this draft. They made a trade in the freaking finals to have 2 picks in the top 40 this year to get some cost-controlled work in and go all in. I don't think the Cavs maybe have the impetus or the pressure or trying to defend a title pressure that Denver has, but they have pressure to win right now, and I think it would be in their interest to kind of think presently and not take what is in front of them for granted, both in the draft and free agency. But for the purposes of this week, go get a pick. If you can get one and there's a deal, and obviously we'll see if that happens, and maybe we'll say there just wasn't one, but if the opportunity presents itself, I think it would really behoove them to chase that.
I agree with you. I think you could take maybe a little bit column A, column B, a guy who could be more NBA ready and perhaps could be available in like that mid to late 20s, early 30s range. Heck, even maybe like the early-ish 20s, like 21 through 24 as well. Maybe they look at Keegan Murray's twin brother, Chris Murray, out of Iowa, who's a junior.
I would.
Yeah, absolutely. Like he's
I would give that an A. I would just give that an A if they pulled that off.
Yeah, like that. He's a 3-4 type player. He has a catch and shoot game. He's a pretty solid defensive player to begin with. He's really good off ball, especially. Like I've been watching a lot of his film, and I'm like, yeah, if the Cavs are able to swing a trade to get back into that back end of the first round, and Chris Murray happens to be available, like yeah, I think you sink your claws into him and don't let go, because perhaps he doesn't start for you, but he certainly makes sense as a rotation guy because he checks a lot of the boxes of clear-cut needs that this Cavs team has just heading into the 2023-24 season. And yeah, it doesn't answer everything, but it certainly makes your approach, whether it's free agency or anything else, just a little bit more easier, just because, again, the market's not great and it's still going to be competitive no matter what. And I agree. If you're able to buy a first round pick and maybe it costs you like a player or something along the way just to kind of make the deal happen, and you get cost controlled depth, especially one that's probably the most NBA ready at the back end of the first round in Murray, like, yeah, you go for that. But we'll also see how the draft shakes out too, just because outside of one, it's a bit of a crapshoot, because it could be Brad Miller, Scoot Henderson at 2, and then the other one at 3, perhaps, or maybe one of the Thompson twins at 2, 3, 4, or 5. Like, there's so much fluidity outside of the first overall pick with Victor Wembanyama that it's going to be a little bit chaotic. And again, like you said, if the Cavs are able to like maybe buy or trade back into the first round, like there could be a good or at least decent chance to make a run on wings at that spot.
Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at PrizePicks. PrizePicks is really easy and super fun to play. All you got to do is pick 2 to 6 players, and if they score more or less than their PrizePicks projections, you win. You can win up to 25 times your money on any entry. There's no competing against other people. It is just you versus the projections available. PrizePicks offers projections on any sport that you watch. This includes the NBA, the NFL, Major League Baseball, PGA, college football, men's college basketball, women's college basketball, soccer, WNBA, esports, NASCAR, tennis, MMA, boxing, disc golf, and more. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It is that easy. They offer safe and fast withdrawals, and they're currently operational in over 30 states and Canada. Wonder how Canada's doing after we beat them in the Nations League, though. Just saying. Download the PrizePicks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with our promo code LOCKEDON. If you deposit $100, PrizePicks will give you $100. If you deposit $50, PrizePicks will give you $50. Don't forget to enter our promo code LOCKEDON at sign up for an instant deposit match up to $100. Evan, let's talk about Koby Altman's draft record.
Sure.
Takes over in 2018. That obviously was a nebulous time if we go back and remember that, which is 5 years ago at this point, which makes me feel older than I already did. That was the month where he was kind of the shadow GM, so to speak, because they were trying to get Chauncey Billups to take over as president of basketball operations. That pick that year becomes Colin Sexton. 2018. That's obviously the summer LeBron leaves as well. You get to 2019, Darius Garland goes 5th. Dylan Windler goes 26. Infamously, Shams had a tweet that they were going to take Keldon Johnson.
Wait.
Get to they take Dylan Windler.
Wasn't
what?
Kobe GM when they selected Colin?
That's what I said.
Okay.
I don't think he was hired officially yet, though. I think that was after the draft.
I don't remember. Okay, I'll think.
I don't think he was. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. Correct me and look it up. And then in 2019, at the end of the first round, they obviously buy a pick from the Pistons. They get KPJ. Isaac Okoro is their 1 pick in 2020. In 2021, their 1 pick is Evan Mobley. And then last year, they take Ochai Agbaji at 14, Khalifa Diop at 39, Isaiah Mobley at 49, and then Luke Travers at 56. Agbaji now with Utah, Diop overseas, Travers overseas. Mobley was on a 2-way deal last year. I mean, here's what I would posit about Koby Altman's draft record.
Pause real quick.
Yeah,
Kobe's the one who negotiated the Kyrie trade to Boston, so that's the pick that became Colin.
Why am I thinking? Whatever. Regardless, I was wrong.
No, you're
matter.
good.
Doesn't matter.
I thought I'm pretty sure Kobe was not. He wasn't president of basketball operations, but he was GM at the time.
Was that the summer before? Regardless, time flat circle. My bad. I was wrong. Koby Altman has nailed 2 picks. Garland and Mobley. The Mobley one, pretty easy just to take Mobley at 3 when Green and Cade are off the board. The Garland one, I think he deserves more credit for, because I think idiots like me would have been like, hey, Jarrett Culver. But it is interesting to see how, like, I think Collins a good player. I think you go down the list. It's like a little... Like, the Windler pick is a miss. The KBJ pick goes down as a miss. Like, there's like 3 kind of actually good players I think he has picked so far since 2018. He also hasn't had a lot of picks because they traded a lot of future picks during that LeBron era, which is how you don't have second rounders in 2020 or 2021.
Yeah. So I talked about maybe doing like a hit, miss, or meh situation. And as you said, the Colin Sexton pick, at least with the power of hindsight, within the moment, you're like, yeah, this makes sense. At least he's playing really well. He's playing better than at least what historically the 8th overall pick has produced at. But you guys have guys like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who did tell the Cavs not to draft him outright, or he refused to work out from him. I don't remember the full story, but I just know he told no to Cleveland. And you have him, or maybe Mikal Bridges, who is not like a superstar player, but he's certainly a position of need for any team, and he could fit in so cleanly with what the Cavs have built currently, just because of how glaring the need is at the 3 spot right now. And I agree with you. Like, you look ahead to the next year's draft, you have Darius Garland, which, with the power of hindsight, because Colin Sexton's on the roster, and then at least I wasn't fully sure what the direction of this rebuild was going to be for Cleveland, because that was the John Beilein year as well. Like, when they drafted Darius Garland, Dylan Windler, and KPJ, and again, with the power of hindsight, like Dylan Windler, maybe you probably shouldn't take him at 26 overall. You probably stick with the Johnson pick that Shams incorrectly first reported. And like, that's like a what if moment sometimes I think about. And the KPJ acquisition, that was 4 second round picks in cash, which is, the best player in NBA history in terms of just like being moved. Like, I think they own every jersey at this point, but it was a smart move, at least because it was a guy that was much higher on the draft board than Kevin Porter Jr. Perhaps like they're like, okay, he's available here at the end of the first round. They structured his contract a lot more uniquely, at least in terms of like a first round pick. And it's just like, there's a lot of guarantees, and it wasn't really like super loaded to begin his rookie scale contract, just to make sure like the Cavs, like if KPJ if he burns us anyway, he's either a movable asset or it's easier for us to cut him or just get rid of him in general. So I think that was good. The Evan, it's good to an extent. Like, he's not with the team anymore. He signed an extension with Houston, but like, who knows what his long-term future is with the Rockets? But
he has an NFL contract.
Yeah, he has an NFL contract. That's a good way to put it. And so, and again, I'm not gonna count someone's pocketbook. Listen to Locked on Rockets if you want to know more about the state of Kevin Porter Jr. and just what the Rockets are going to do this summer. And then looking ahead, you have the Isaac Okoro pick, and I think this one is a bit of a whiff if you're the Cavs. Because I know Tyrese Halliburton also wasn't going to work out for Cleveland, because I actually asked him, because it was during like the COVID draft, like, hey, are you going to work out for the Cavs? He's like, no, they have 2 guards on their team in Darius Garland and Colin Sexton. Why would I work out for a team or I'm not going to play? Like, you look at the Okoro pick, and then you have Devin Vassell, who I think was a guy I was already really high on, but he's going to be really, really good for the Spurs. And yeah, there's a lot of just not great players throughout this pool, but like Halliburton and Vassell, with Vassell going 11 and Halliburton going 12, are like the kind of the 2 that stick out to me. Maybe Denny Avia as well, just because he could be a bit of a different player too, depending on, again, what the Wizards do or how much play time he gets. But yeah, then you look ahead to next year, like Evan Mobley, that's the best player from this draft class. Darius Garland is also, that's the take I was going to have, as the best player from his draft class. Like, that was the right call. Maybe Kobe's just very good at drafting in, an odd number of years. Like, maybe the Khalifa Diop pick and the Luke Travers pick end up being something worthwhile, and perhaps Isaiah Mobley ends up being like a rotational depth piece for the Cavs as well. But Ochai Agbaji, at least, maybe that was just enough for the Jazz to agree to the trade with Cleveland for the Cavs to acquire Donovan Mitchell. But Ochai Agbaji had some pretty interesting summer league moments for Cleveland, but he was part of the package for the Cavs to get their most noteworthy player since LeBron James. So you get an A- for that one, or that's in an attendance credit for like an entry level college class.
Let's just go year by year and say yay, just yay or nay. Let's be definitive about picks. Sexton, I'm going to say that's obviously in a different situation now, but that ultimately he's a good NBA player. That's a good pick.
Yes. He's a good NBA player. I know there's the power of hindsight, like I said, but he's a good NBA player. Like, especially just historically, because the 8th pick isn't great.
Yeah, it's not a great pick. Darius Garland, that's a yay.
That's a 2 thumbs up. Yay. That's the best player in this draft class. Yay. Depending on how you feel about Ja Morant. I mean, Ja on the court, but like the off the court stuff that comes with it kind of gives him a little baggage. And like Zion is never available. Then you have RJ and then DeAndre Hunter, who is also good, but I just don't think he's as good as Darius Garland.
No. Then Josh stuff and Zion seems complicated. All right. Dylan Windler, that's going to be a no for me, dog.
That's an F-, especially because, the Keldon Johnson, what if? When was Brandon Clark picked? Was he before Windler was available?
I believe so.
Okay, so Brandon Clark was the guy I always think of too. I was like, if he was available, if I were the Cavs, I would have grabbed him, despite like Tristan Thompson and Andre Drummond being on the roster at the time.
Yeah, Clark went 21. Grant Williams went 22.
I think
Evan, do you know who went one? Do you know what Cavs legend went one pick after Dylan Windler?
Can't do Kevin Gailey because I looked at the draft records, but Kevin Gailey went one pick after. Jordan Poole's an interesting one. It may not have worked out just because Cleveland was rebuilding and Poole benefited from playing with the Golden State Warriors, but that is like an interesting one. Maybe Claxton as well because he went 31st. Like he is going to be a pretty
Claxton's. Yeah, I would prefer Claxton over Jordan Poole at this point in time. KPJ, 2 thumbs down.
I give it like the Gladiator halfway thumb because KPJ, again, you could see the potential, you could see the vision. I still don't know what he's going to be as a player, but
I think we kind of know. I think we kind of know.
I'll be fully clear with everyone. I did not watch a second of Rockets basketball unless they played the Cavs because they're dreadful this last season. But the KPJ pick, I mean, gosh, we could maybe like try and find the common thread of the picks they gave up to acquire him and what those players became, I guess. But there's always that hypothetical. But like, I was like, it's, for the 30th overall pick, you had a guy who it could be a solid 6-man. He's a bigger 1, 2, 3 type player and like kind of fit the bill of like maybe what the Cavs kind of need at times on the court at the 3 spot right now. And I don't know. I'm just like in between on it. Like, it's the 30th overall pick and it ended up being a hit. Like that rarely happens for that point in the draft. And it worked out. Do you know who went 55th overall in that draft?
No.
Cleveland Charge legend Kyle Guy.
Okay, that's cool. Isaac Okoro.
All right, man. Cool.
Like he's the Kyle Guy. Like he's fine. Like legend feels like a stretch.
Broke. Yeah, I guess so. Go ahead.
That's a stretch. The real Cleveland Charge legend / Can Charge legend that played guard is Quinn Cook because he won an NBA championship and was awesome in the G League for a couple of years. That's the real franchise legend. I'm gonna just remain on Okoro Island and just give it a thumbs up and just kind of laugh about it, even though I feel not super confident in that at this current moment. I don't think the Cavs is super confident in that at this current moment. And you would certainly rather have Devin Vassell right now.
Yeah, Devin Vassell is your preference just in terms of pure fit. Okongwu is a player that still intrigues the heck out of me. I think he's going to be pretty good when he takes over as the starting center for the Hawks whenever they move on from Clint Capella. But other than that, the field is the 2020 draft was such a dip compared to 2019 in terms of just top end talent or just talent in general. Like Pat Williams, probably not going to pan out as an NBA player, at least not what the Bulls expected. But Okoro, I'm indifferent on just because there's Devin Vassell. I know Tyrese Halliburton said no, but Halliburton would make a ton of sense with the Cavs, at least what they're building. And my draft process has kind of always been you take the best player available. And and that just wasn't the case in this one. So
Mobley.
Yeah.
Yep.
A plus 2 thumbs up. Again, Koby Altman may be just good at drafting. And I'll say it this way, the top 5 of odd number drafts, he's doing all right so far.
And then here's 2020 Abaji. I'm going to give a thumbs up. I liked a lot of what I saw at the end of the year with Utah. Jop, no idea. Isaiah Mobley, I don't think we really have an idea yet. I think we're going to find out this summer what the Cavs think about him. And Luke Travers, I don't know. So that's one guy who I think is a thumbs up who you traded for Mitchell. So yeah, that's worth it. And then 3 guys I don't think we have actual answers on yet.
That's the best way to look at it. It's just Jop's the more NBA ready prospect according to Koby Altman, but we'll see how they, like you said, how they feel about Isaiah Mobley going forward as a player, if they sign him to a deal, or maybe they kind of finesse this and stretch it a little bit more and sign him to another 2-way contract. But just with how much depth the Cavs may need, maybe Mobley does end up being more of a permanent member of the team.
Yeah. All right, let's end there. I'm Chris Manning. That's Evan Dammarell. Thanks again to Jake Stevens for his production. Back at you tomorrow with more Locked On Cavs.